The network graph is a confusing name for what it is. It's less complicated than it sounds. This is really just talking about the tree view of all the changes made to the repository. It's grouped so that you can see the work coming from branches on the repository as well as all of the branches of the forks of the repository. Let's go take a look at some of these. To look at the network graph, we've switched back to the jQuery repository. The reason is that we want to see a good amount of data. Let's go ahead and take a look at the network tab. We're going to open it right here. From this screen, you'll notice that we have a fairly significant graph. I'm going to scroll down here. This is the network graph. In this view, you'll notice that along the side is the word jQuery. That's referring to this fork. In this case, it's the main repository. Below it, you'll see another name. If we click and pan down a little bit, those are each forks of this repository. These lines represent a merge from another fork into the main repository of jQuery up here. That's what these vertical lines represent. The horizontal lines are the history along the normal source control. In keeping with a normal standard, the dots represent commits and the lines are the path between them. So if we scroll to the left, we'll see a couple more commits. And we can see some commits here that were made directly on the branch. If we mouse over one of these, you'll see the information that was made in the change. If we look at this change here, you'll notice that there is this yellow line coming down. If we scroll down, we should be able to see, after a little while, here it is, that this fork has quite a few changes here. So this fork came off of that version. At some point, it might come back in, but for now, that's where we've pulled off. If we bring it back in, it will be added onto this line. For now, let's go ahead and take a look at this just so we can see. You'll notice that this developer has been making modifications. If we click on one of these, it'll actually bring up automatically the commit that was made here, so we can go and take a look at all the details. If we go back and look at that again, we could also click here, which is the fork itself. And now we're on the network graph from the perspective of this fork. So if we go up a level, this is the fork that we were just looking at in the network graph. And that's pretty much what the network graph is useful for, is seeing what's changing, what's going on, and it's especially useful if you're really involved in a large open source project to be able to see where people are making changes. GitHub includes a section of graphs with a bunch of useful information. Using these, we're able to see who is contributing to the project, when it's being contributed to as a timeline, as well as the times of day during the week that it's being contributed to. It's also great for seeing lines of code added and removed, which can be extremely useful when you're trying to track down new features or refactorings in the repository. There's just a wealth of information in these graphs, and I think it's important that we go take a look at these. So let's go open up GitHub again. Here we are back on the jQuery project. We're taking a look at what we can find out in the graphs. I'm going to go ahead and open up the graphs using this link here on the right. And you'll notice that there are 4 different graphs here that are available to us. We're obviously not seeing much information just yet. You'll notice that it's suggesting to us that we could look at the contributors, and we can see the contributions over time. We can look at the commit activity and see over the previous year, how much activity is happening at any given time. We can look at the code frequency, and we can see the additions and deletions that have been made. We can also take a look at the punch card, which is just there to show you when are people actually making their commits? Is it during the day? Is it on weekends? Is it on weekdays? And it shows you individual days and times, sort of like what the picture shows. Let's go ahead and start with contributors. So when we open this up, you'll notice that it starts us off with a pretty decent graph. It shows you some of the top contributors and shows you bits of information about them. So you can see when they're committing. You'll notice that some people commit for a while and then don't show up again. Others have more consistent commits, but you'll notice that it's pretty common for a handoff or something like that to happen in here when you look at these graphs. Let's go take a look at the next graph. Commit activity is going to show us when most of our commits are happening. So you'll notice over the past year, we had a pretty significant amount of commits here in the week of September 7th. Let's take a look at the next one, code frequency. So I mentioned to you that you could use this to track down when new features are added or when a refactoring may have happened. If we take a look, you'll see that these are probably new features. This is probably some kind of a refactoring. Something got removed here. Something definitely got added here. But there's definitely a lot of additions and deletions at different points. So using this, I could potentially look at those dates and track down a feature or refactoring that I'm looking for. And it gives you a pretty good sense of what's going on in the project. The punch card, in this case, is a little bit overwhelming. And now one of the reasons for this is if you were a small project and maybe you only worked on weekends, for example, you would see Sunday and Saturday would be loaded with very large circles, and then the weekdays would be small. In this case, because it's a large open source project, there are commits happening pretty much all the time. So you'll notice on the left is days of the week, and then the horizontal is just the time of day. So it's each hour is listed there. And so you could see, for example, if I wanted to look at Tuesday at 4 p.m., I would just go up to Tuesday at 4 p.m., and it looks like there are 72 commits that were made around that time in this project. And so that's a fairly significant hour. In a less popular project, this would be more significant. Let's go ahead and open up my project so we can see the difference. When we open up this one, you can see that it's a lot simpler because I haven't made many commits to this project, and you can see when I'm making them. Primarily it looks like I'm making them on weekends and maybe a little bit during the week. And that's pretty much what we get there. The pulse of a repository is meant to be a current glimpse into what's been going on recently. It lets you choose a time period to view and shows some of what's been going on lately. For active projects, the pulse provides useful details, but for inactive projects, the pulse will usually tell you that the project is dead. In that sense, it's like checking for a pulse. You can see the current condition of things. Let's go take a look at one now. I'm sure at this point that you're surprised to see that we're here back at jQuery again. This time we're going to take a look at the pulse. In order to do that, we're going to want to click on this link here on the right. That's going to take us over to the pulse page. You'll remember that I mentioned that we look at a time period, and that sort of gives us an idea of recent activity. By default, we're starting out on 1 week. You'll notice that there aren't any active issues, nothing's been closed, nothing's been opened, so no new issues coming out. However, there are 3 active pull requests. 1 of them was merged, and 2 of them have been proposed. You can also see that we've got some authors contributing. We can see some details about the pull requests. Let's go ahead and take a look at a little bit longer period. So when we set the period out a month, we get quite a few more pieces of information. It seems that there have been a lot more contributions, far more authors over the course of a month versus a week, There have only been a few more pull requests, but no issues have been entered either. And again, we can see some details about this. Let's see what it looks like on a dead project, like mine. So when we look at this project, you can see that there are 3 pull requests. Those are just testing ones that I've been using. A couple of them are from this recording, and one of them was just a test. And you can see that it's got a decent amount of information about this. So this project clearly doesn't look very active, considering that this is a month, and really it's only been revived in the past 24 hours. So not exactly a thriving open source project here.